All right, fam, day one of the remodel. You guys see all these giant cocaine straw looking things? They're not. They're actually concrete piers. And if you're buying them from the store, they look something like this. And you're gonna space them out according to your structural engineer specifications. So now that the home has been successfully releveled, maybe, probably, we begin day one of reframing. And as you can see, I've already begun here. Pro tip, hire an architect that knows what they're doing so that you can get this. This is called a scale. And I know that because it says so right there. Scale. What that tells you is that for every 3/16 here on the paper, it's going to equal 1 foot in real life. For example, we've got 9/16 there. 9/16 divided by 3/16 equals 3. Maybe. Anyway, that ended up being 36.5. Always double check your measurements because architects, well, they don't build the things, you know? I don't really trust architects, so I always like to double check everything. I don't just go by the plans. I mean, I will for placement, but final measurements, you know, if you're in a pre-existing home, just measure it. It'll take a few more minutes. You can always take more off your wood, but you can't put it back on unless you get that Milwaukee board stretcher. I've had mine on pre-order for a few months already. Pro tip, there's a difference between red and blue chalk, believe it or not. Blue chalk you're gonna use when laying out walls on wood, things of that nature, because, well, in a finished house anyway, or a house with the roof, because you don't have to worry about the marks washing off. Red chalk, well, that's Milwaukee chalk. That costs extra. Anyway, red chalk is more permanent, harder to wipe off, and a little bit more visible. So if I were to chalk the lines here and mess up, well, I don't know. That's not my problem. The point is, use blue chalk unless you're on concrete outdoors. Red chalk will stay a little longer. Problem number 2. I've got my wall here at 11 feet according to the plans. However, I can't lay out the wall here. Yeah, even with plywood there, I can't do it. Reason being is all the joists run this way. My wall is going to sit right here, which means I'll need to add some form of blocking. Ideally, you would like to fit another joist in there. However, because of the sheeting or the floors, I really can't do that unless I cut some of it away and then I somehow finagle what seems to be a 10-inch joist into that little hole right there. That ain't gonna happen, at least not today. Be a lot tighter than my ex, I'll tell you that. So instead, I'll find the beams like these. They're quite substantial beams and they're sitting on the concrete piers that we talked about earlier. I'll lay blocking down there, resting directly on the beams, and that'll carry the entire weight of the new wall. These are the small things that if you don't catch, you're gonna have sinking walls. Unless you have a concrete foundation. In that case, you know, do whatever you want. I'm not your mom. I told you all this chalk was temporary. Look at that. Nice. So follow along as we get into more hijinks.